Hey guys, tonight we're going to step through the wooden door of a medieval inn, just as the last light of day disappears behind the fields, and for the next several hours you're going to discover that getting a simple night of sleep is far more complicated than it sounds. The road behind you is muddy, your clothes are dusty, your feet are tired, and all you want is a warm meal, a dry corner, and a bed where nobody bothers you. Unfortunately, you have chosen the wrong century for that particular dream. The inn ahead glows faintly through its small windows, with firelight flickering against rough wooden walls. You can hear voices before you even reach the entrance. Laughter, coughing, footsteps, clattering dishes, and the occasional bark of a dog. Somewhere inside, someone is singing badly enough to make you wonder whether the medieval world invented noise specifically to prevent people from sleeping. And you probably won't survive this night, with your dignity intact. Still, you push open the heavy wooden door. Warm air rolls toward you, carrying the unmistakable mixture of smoke, cooked meat, damp wool, spilled ale, wet leather, and too many people occupying too little space. A few travelers glance up as you enter. Nobody smiles for long. Everyone is tired. Everyone has traveled. Everyone appears to have the same desperate question written across their face. Where am I going to sleep? So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you settle in, tell me where you're listening from and what your local time is right now. It is strangely comforting to imagine people in different places listening to the same quiet historical journey while their own nights unfold. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step farther inside. The first thing you notice is that the medieval inn is not remotely like the cozy little establishment you might imagine from a painting or a modern historical drama. There is no neat reception desk waiting for you. There is no quiet hallway leading toward a private room. There is no cheerful sign explaining the breakfast hours. Instead, there is a broad common room filled with movement. A fire burns in an open hearth, sending orange light upward while smoke drifts lazily toward the roof. The ceiling above you is darkened from years of soot. Wooden beams cross overhead, and between them hang ropes, tools, bundles of herbs, perhaps a few drying garments, and things whose purpose you cannot immediately identify. You decide not to ask. A long wooden table occupies much of the room. Travelers sit shoulder to shoulder, eating from wooden bowls and drinking from rough cups. A merchant in a russet cloak is talking loudly to a man wearing an indigo hood. Nearby, a tired-looking woman is trying to keep a child from reaching into someone else's food. Behind the tables, the innkeeper moves constantly. He carries a jug, then a bowl, then another jug. He stops to answer a question, turns around to collect a plate, steps aside to avoid a servant carrying firewood, and immediately receives another request from someone who apparently believes the entire establishment revolves around their personal hunger. You watch this for a moment and realize that finding a place to sleep may be less important to the innkeeper than finding a place for everyone to sit. Eventually, you manage to get his attention. He looks you over. Your muddy boots, your travel-stained clothing, your tired face. Then he asks where you came from. You answer. He asks where you are going. You answer again. Then comes the question that matters. Do you need a bed? You nod. He pauses. There is a tiny silence, not the silence of uncertainty, but the silence of someone mentally counting how many people are already occupying the sleeping area. Finally, he points toward a staircase. You feel a brief flicker of relief. A bed exists. Somewhere. Possibly. You climb the narrow wooden steps, each one creaking beneath your weight. The air becomes warmer as you rise, but the smell changes too. The smoke is stronger here. So is the smell of wool, sweat, damp straw, and bodies that have been traveling for days. At the top, you reach a low-ceilinged sleeping chamber. And this is where your confidence begins to disappear. The room is long and crowded. Beds are arranged close together, sometimes separated by nothing more than a narrow strip of floor. Some are simple wooden frames. Others are little more than thick layers of straw spread over a platform. People are already lying down. Some are sleeping. Some are talking quietly. One person is coughing. Another is scratching their arm. Someone near the far wall is snoring with such confidence that you suspect they have been practicing. You stand in the doorway. The innkeeper gestures toward an empty place. Empty is perhaps too generous a word. There is a mattress there. That is true. There is also another traveler already sitting beside it. You look at him. He looks at you. Neither of you speaks. Then he shifts slightly to make room. You understand. This is your bed, not your room, not your private chamber. Your bed. And perhaps, if you are lucky, half of it. You slowly place your belongings down. Outside, the last traces of daylight disappear. Inside, the fire continues to crackle. The travelers settle deeper into their blankets. The wooden building creaks around you, and as you prepare yourself for what you hope will be a peaceful night, you have not yet discovered the most important rule of medieval lodging. You may have paid for a place to sleep, but that does not mean sleep has agreed to show up. The first thing you learn about your medieval bed is that it does not belong entirely to you. You had imagined, perhaps, that once the innkeeper pointed you upstairs, your difficulties were mostly over. You had climbed the stairs. You had found the sleeping chamber. You had located the straw mattress. You had even managed to arrange your belongings beside it without dropping anything. Surely now you can simply lie down. You lower yourself carefully onto the mattress. The straw beneath you compresses with a dry, whispering sound. It is not soft. It is not exactly hard either. It is simply uneven. One part of your back sinks slightly, while another rests against something that feels suspiciously like a stalk of straw pressing through the fabric. You shift to the left, then to the right. Neither position feels particularly convincing. Beside you, the stranger sharing the sleeping space barely moves. You glance at him. He is already asleep, or at least you assume he is. His face is turned toward the wall, his rough wool blanket pulled up to his shoulders. His boots sit near the foot of the bed. A small leather pouch rests beneath his arm. You realize that he has probably done this many times. He knows how to sleep in a medieval inn. You do not. You are still trying to understand the rules. The first rule seems to be that personal space is negotiable. Very negotiable. Your bed is close to the next bed. The next bed is close to another. There is barely enough room for a person to walk between them. If someone wants to climb into bed at midnight, they may have to step carefully around your belongings. If someone gets up, they may wake you. If someone rolls over, you may hear it. If someone snores, congratulations. You now have a nighttime companion. You pull your blanket closer. The room is gradually becoming quieter. The voices downstairs have softened. The servants have stopped moving quite so quickly. The fire below still crackles. Somewhere outside, an animal makes a brief sound and then falls silent. For a few moments, everything seems peaceful. Then the stranger beside you turns over. The mattress shifts. You shift with it. You stare into the darkness. He turns back. The mattress settles. You close your eyes. A moment later, someone across the room coughs. You open them again. You wait. Nothing happens. You close them. A floorboard creaks. Your eyes open. This is going to be a long night. You try to make yourself comfortable by arranging the blanket more carefully. It is thick enough to provide some warmth, but it is rough against your skin. The fabric carries the smell of smoke from the hearth and the unmistakable scent of travel. You begin to understand that medieval lodging is not designed around the modern idea of comfort. The inn exists first to shelter travelers. If you can stay reasonably dry, reasonably warm, and reasonably protected from the weather, that may already count as success. Comfort is an optional luxury. Privacy is even more optional. You turn your head toward the rest of the chamber. In the weak candlelight, you can make out several sleeping figures. One person lies completely still. Another has curled tightly beneath a blanket. A third has one arm hanging over the side of the bed. Near the wall, someone appears to be sleeping with their mouth open. You decide not to think about that. At least nobody is looking at you. Then you notice something else. The room contains travelers from different places. You can see it in their clothing, their bags, their boots, and the small objects placed beside their beds. A merchant may have traveled with goods. A pilgrim may have a small religious token. A laborer may carry little more than a knife, a pouch, and the clothes on his back. A messenger may have spent the entire day riding. Everyone has arrived here for a different reason, yet tonight, everyone has become almost identical. Everyone is simply tired. And everyone needs somewhere to sleep. You wonder whether the innkeeper knows who everyone is. Probably not. He knows enough to collect payment. Enough to know who ordered supper. Enough to recognize a troublesome guest. But once the upstairs chamber becomes dark, the travelers become a collection of exhausted strangers. There is something strangely comforting about that. Nobody expects you to tell your life story. Nobody cares what you accomplished today. Nobody is impressed by where you came from. You are tired. They are tired. That is enough. You pull the blanket beneath your chin. The candle burns lower. The shadows stretch farther across the wooden wall. You begin drifting toward sleep. Then the person beside you suddenly sits up. You immediately wake. He reaches down. For a moment you wonder what is happening. Then he simply retrieves his boots. He puts them beside the bed. You stare at him. He looks at you. He says nothing. Then he lies down again. You slowly close your eyes. Perhaps this is normal. Perhaps you are simply not accustomed to medieval normal. The building groans softly. The wooden beams expand and contract with the changing temperature. A draft slips through a gap somewhere in the wall. You feel it touch your face. You pull the blanket tighter. The mattress rustles beneath you. Straw shifts. Your shoulder finds a slightly less uncomfortable position. For the first time since arriving, you feel yourself becoming sleepy. Then footsteps appear on the staircase. Slow footsteps. Someone is coming upstairs. You hear the creak of the first step, then another, then another. You open your eyes. A shadow appears at the doorway. A late traveler has arrived. Of course. He stands there carrying a bundle and looking around the room. There is almost nowhere left. The innkeeper follows behind him with a candle. The newcomer whispers something. The innkeeper points toward an empty corner. The newcomer looks disappointed. You almost feel sorry for him. Then you realize what his arrival means. He has to find a place to sleep. And finding that place may require moving someone. Possibly you. The innkeeper walks toward the beds. The candlelight passes across sleeping faces. The stranger beside you remains still. You hold your breath. The innkeeper stops. Thankfully not beside you. He points toward another narrow mattress near the far wall. The late traveler sets down his bundle. He begins preparing for the night. You finally exhale. Your eyes close again. But now you understand the true problem. In a medieval inn, the night does not belong to the people who are already sleeping. It belongs to everyone who still has somewhere to go. And until the last traveler arrives, the door downstairs remains a promise that your sleep can be interrupted at any moment. You listen to the newcomer settling into his bed. A blanket unfolds. Straw shifts. Someone whispers. Then silence returns. You wait. Nothing else happens. Your breathing slows. The room becomes darker. The candle shrinks to a tiny golden point. And finally, surrounded by strangers whose names you do not know, lying on a mattress you are sharing with someone you have never met, you begin to drift towards sleep. For the moment at least, the medieval inn has stopped moving. But you have not yet discovered what is living inside your mattress. The room is quiet now, at least quiet by medieval standards. You lie beneath the rough wool blanket, staring into the darkness while your body slowly adjusts to the strange mattress beneath you. The straw shifts whenever you breathe deeply. Somewhere beside you, the traveler makes a soft sound in his sleep. Across the room, someone coughs once and then settles again. You are beginning to believe that perhaps you can finally sleep. Then you smell the smoke. It reaches you slowly at first. A faint, bitter scent. You turn your head toward the doorway. The smoke from the hearth downstairs has found its way upward through the gaps between the wooden floors and beams. It is not thick enough to fill the room, but it hangs in the air like an invisible blanket. You breathe in. Your nose immediately regrets the decision. The smoke carries everything with it. Burning wood, ash, cooking fat, roasting meat, damp wool, and something else you cannot quite identify. You decide that not knowing is probably better. This is one of the strange realities of sleeping in a medieval inn. The same fire that keeps you warm downstairs also helps fill the entire building with the smell of everything happening around it. The hearth is the heart of the inn. It provides warmth. It provides light. It cooks food. It heats water. It gives travelers a place to gather. And it also produces smoke. Lots of smoke. The building has openings that allow some of it to escape. But medieval construction is not designed with the sealed, carefully ventilated rooms you might be accustomed to. Gaps between timbers are part of the structure. Small windows allow air to move. Roof openings may help carry smoke upward, so you breathe what the building breathes. You pull the blanket slightly over your nose. The wool smells smoky too. Excellent. You have now covered your face with another source of the same problem. You uncover it again. The traveler beside you turns over. The straw crackles. You listen. The room settles. For a while you focus on the sounds instead of the smells. The fire downstairs pops. A wooden cup falls somewhere below. Someone laughs. A door closes. Then silence. You inhale again. Smoke. You begin wondering what else is floating through this air. There are no modern fans quietly filtering the room, no electric ventilation system, no sealed windows with carefully controlled airflow. The air simply moves according to the building, the weather, and the fire. On a cold night, you might desperately want that air to stay inside. On a smoky night, you might wish it would leave. You cannot have both. You turn onto your side. The stranger beside you is close enough that you can hear his breathing. You try not to think about how many other people have slept in this same room. How many coats have hung from these beams? How many wet boots have stood beside these beds? How many travelers have eaten downstairs and then carried the smells of the meal upstairs with them? The answer is probably more than you would like. You close your eyes. The smoke continues. Then another smell arrives. Cooked onions. You can almost taste them. Someone downstairs must still be preparing something. Perhaps a late traveler has ordered food. Perhaps the innkeeper is reheating leftovers. Perhaps somebody has simply decided that midnight is the perfect time for another meal. You hear footsteps below. Then the scrape of a wooden stool, a quiet voice. Another voice answering. The inn never truly stops. You had assumed that once the guests went upstairs, the building would become still. Instead, you discover that an inn has several different rhythms. The common room has one. The kitchen has another. The sleeping chamber has another. The stable outside has another. And all of them overlap. A horse shifts in the stable. A servant walks across the courtyard. Someone downstairs pours another cup. Someone upstairs coughs. A wooden beam creaks. The fire crackles. The night continues. You realize that sleeping here requires learning how to ignore things. That may be the real skill. You cannot control the smoke. You cannot control the sounds. You cannot control the other travelers. You cannot control the weather. You cannot even control the mattress. But perhaps you can teach your mind not to care. You take a slow breath. The smoke seems less noticeable. You listen to the fire. Crackle. Pause. Crackle. A gust of wind touches the wooden walls. The room becomes colder for a moment, then warmer again. Your eyelids grow heavier. You are almost asleep. Then you hear laughter downstairs, loud laughter. You open your eyes. Two travelers are talking near the hearth. Their voices rise and fall. You cannot understand every word, but you do not need to. You know they are enjoying themselves. You are not. You pull the blanket over your shoulder. The laughter fades. You relax. Then comes a cough. Then another. Then a sneeze. You stare into the darkness. You are beginning to understand why travelers might prefer reaching their destination before sunset. A late arrival does not simply mean fewer choices. It means entering a building that has already been used by everyone else. The fire has already been burning. The tables have already been crowded. The beds have already been occupied. The air has already collected the day's smells. You are arriving at the end of the process. And yet, strangely, there is something comforting about the chaos. This inn is alive. It is not silent. It is not clean in the modern sense. It is not private, but it is shelter. Outside, the night is dark. The road is cold. The fields are wet. Bandits, animals, weather, and uncertainty all exist beyond these walls. Inside there is fire. There are people. There is food. There is a roof. For a medieval traveler, that can be enough. You shift your head on the rough pillow. It is stuffed with something softer than the mattress, though you are not entirely sure what. You decide not to investigate. The smoke drifts upward again. A thin line of golden light appears beneath the doorway. Someone downstairs is still awake. You wonder whether the innkeeper ever gets to sleep. Probably not very much. There are guests arriving, guests leaving, food to prepare, fire to maintain, animals to check, money to collect, arguments to settle. The building itself requires constant attention. And somehow, you are expected to sleep peacefully in the middle of it all. You almost laugh. Perhaps peaceful sleep was never the point. Perhaps the goal is simply to make it until morning. You close your eyes again. This time, the sounds seem farther away. The fire becomes softer. The voices blur. The smell of smoke becomes part of the background. Your body relaxes. Your breathing slows. You feel yourself slipping towards sleep. And then, just before you disappear into it, something lands lightly on your blanket. You open your eyes. You stare at the tiny dark shape. It moves. You sit completely still. The object moves again. You slowly lift the blanket, and suddenly you understand that the smoke, the noise, and the crowded room may not be the worst things about your medieval bed, because now you have discovered that the straw has guests of its own. You keep staring at the mattress. For several seconds, you do absolutely nothing. The tiny movement has disappeared beneath the folds of the blanket, but you are certain you saw something. Something small. Something alive. Something that has no business being invited into your bed. You slowly lift the blanket again. The straw underneath looks perfectly ordinary. Dry stalks, woven fabric, a few loose pieces of straw sticking through the surface. Nothing moves. You lower the blanket. Perhaps you imagined it. Travel exhaustion can do strange things to the mind. You have been walking all day. You are hungry. You are tired. You have spent hours breathing road dust and cold air. Perhaps the mysterious movement was simply a loose piece of straw shifting beneath the blanket. You close your eyes. You wait. Nothing. You breathe out. Good. You turn onto your side. Then you feel something tickle your ankle. Your eyes open immediately. You sit up. Now you are certain. The mattress has guests. Tiny ones. And apparently they have decided that you are part of the furniture. You carefully move your blanket aside and inspect the bedding. You are not about to conduct a scientific investigation in the middle of the night, but you now understand why medieval travelers might have had very different expectations about cleanliness. The mattress is made largely from straw or similar plant material. It is practical. It is relatively cheap. It can be replaced or refreshed. But it is not sealed away inside a perfectly clean covering. It is part of the bed itself, and after many travelers have slept on it, carried dust into it, sweated into it, and dragged clothing across it, the bedding becomes a world of its own. You look toward the stranger beside you. He is sleeping peacefully. How? You wonder whether he knows. Perhaps he does. Perhaps he has simply accepted that this is how beds work. You begin to suspect that acceptance is one of the great survival skills of medieval life. The mattress is uncomfortable. Accept it. The room is crowded. Accept it. The smoke is irritating. Accept it. Someone is snoring. Accept it. There is a tiny creature wandering across your blanket. Well, you are working on accepting that one. You gently shake the blanket. The movement disappears. You shake it again. A little straw falls toward the floor. You stop. You do not want to wake everyone. There is no reason to announce your discovery to the entire room. Imagine the scene. You stand up in the middle of the night and declare that your mattress has inhabitants. Someone would probably shrug. Someone else might laugh. The innkeeper might simply tell you that another bed is unavailable. So you remain where you are. You pull the blanket back over yourself. You decide to keep your boots nearby, not because you expect danger, simply because you have begun to appreciate the value of being ready to move quickly. The room is quiet again. A faint glow from the downstairs fire reaches through the gaps beneath the door. The traveler beside you breathes slowly. Someone across the room turns over. The straw rustles. You listen. Then another tiny tickle touches your sleeve. You freeze. You look down. Nothing. You wait. Nothing. Perhaps it is only the straw. You try to convince yourself. The problem is that medieval bedding does not provide much psychological reassurance. Modern bedding is designed to create a barrier between you and the mattress. A clean sheet, a washable cover, a smooth surface. Here, the relationship is much more direct. You lie on the straw. The straw touches the cloth. The cloth touches you. And anything living in the straw has a surprisingly easy route towards your blanket. You sigh quietly. At least the room is warm. Mostly. You pull your blanket closer. The night continues. And despite everything, you begin thinking about why straw became such a useful bedding material. It is plentiful. It grows in fields. It is lightweight. It is easy to carry. After grain is harvested, the remaining stalks can be put to many practical uses. That makes straw valuable in a world where almost nothing should be wasted. It can become roofing material. It can be used for animal bedding. It can help with household tasks. And it can fill a mattress. For an innkeeper, that makes practical sense. A mattress filled with expensive soft material would be costly to produce and maintain. Straw is much easier. When it becomes too worn, dirty, or flattened, it can be replaced. At least in theory. And that word matters. In theory. Because an inn with many travelers constantly arriving and leaving has to balance comfort against cost. Every blanket costs money. Every mattress requires labor. Every piece of bedding needs attention. The innkeeper has to think about food, firewood, repairs, animals' rent, supplies, and dozens of other expenses. Your comfort is somewhere on that enormous list, not necessarily at the top. You look around the room again. The walls are rough. The floorboards are uneven. The beds are simple. Here has been designed to function, not to impress you, not to make you feel pampered. The inn's job is to get you through the night. And suddenly the little creatures in the mattress seem almost like part of the same philosophy. You are not sleeping in a carefully controlled environment. You are sleeping inside a living building. The building has people. Animals are nearby. Food is being cooked. Smoke is moving. Straw is shifting. Wood is creaking. Nothing is completely separate. Everything overlaps. You lie back down. This time you place the blanket more carefully. You keep your feet covered. You tuck the edges closer around yourself. It is not elegant, but it feels safer. The traveler beside you suddenly murmurs something in his sleep. You cannot understand the words. Then he becomes quiet again. You smile faintly. At least you are not the only one having a strange night. A gust of wind moves outside. The tiny window rattles. The fire downstairs crackles. Somewhere in the darkness, a horse stamps its foot. The sounds blend together. You begin to notice something unexpected. The more you listen, the less frightening the sounds become. The inn has its own nighttime rhythm. The occasional creak, the distant murmur, the movement of straw, the soft breathing of strangers, the wind against the wooden walls. It is not silent, but perhaps silence was never normal here. You close your eyes again. You imagine the travelers who slept in this same room before you, merchants carrying goods between towns, pilgrims following long roads, farm workers traveling for seasonal labor, messengers rushing between settlements, families moving from one place to another. Thousands of tired people may have passed through places like this. They all wanted the same basic things: food, warmth, shelter, and a few hours without having to walk. Maybe your mattress does not need to be perfect. Maybe the room does not need to be silent. Maybe you do not need privacy. You simply need morning to arrive. That thought comforts you. You settle deeper into the straw. Your body is still tired. Your eyes are heavy. The little creatures, wherever they have gone, seem to have lost interest in you. For a few minutes, everything is peaceful. You almost fall asleep. Then the person across the room starts snoring. Not softly, not politely, not occasionally. He begins producing a deep, rhythmic rumble that seems determined to become the official soundtrack of the entire chamber. You stare into the darkness. The mattress was bad. The smoke was bad. The mysterious insects were bad. But now you discover that the greatest enemy of medieval sleep may not be hiding inside your bed at all. It may be lying in the bed across the room. The snoring begins again. A deep rumble rolls across the chamber. It starts quietly. Then it grows. Then it stops. For one glorious second, you think the sleeper has finally gone silent. You relax. Your eyes close. Then another rumble begins, louder than the first. You stare into the darkness. There is something almost impressive about it. The man across the room appears completely peaceful. His blanket rises and falls gently with every breath. His face shows no sign that he is aware of the destruction happening around him. You, meanwhile, are wide awake. You turn onto your back. The snoring continues. You turn onto your side. It continues. You pull the blanket over your head. It becomes slightly quieter. Unfortunately, the blanket also becomes warmer. You uncover your face. The snoring is waiting for you. You begin to wonder whether medieval travelers had developed special techniques for sleeping through noise. Perhaps they simply learned not to care. After all, silence was probably unusual. A medieval town was filled with sounds. Animals, carts, footsteps, church bells, hammering, voices, dogs, children, market sellers, people calling across streets. The natural world was loud too. Wind moved through trees, rain struck wooden roofs, horses shifted in stables. Birds woke early. So perhaps the human brain was accustomed to a constant background of sound. But this particular sound is difficult to ignore. The snorer seems to have discovered a rhythm. Rumble, pause, rumble, pause, rumble. You begin counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. You stop. There is no reason to count someone else's breathing. You try another strategy. You focus on the fire. The faint crackling from downstairs is softer. You listen carefully. Crackle, pop, crackle. The snoring continues behind it. You imagine the two sounds becoming part of the same rhythm. Fire, snore, fire, snore. It almost works. Almost. Then someone else begins coughing. You open your eyes. Of course, the chamber has now become an orchestra. The snorer provides the bass. The coughing traveler provides the percussion. Someone shifting in straw provides a soft rustling rhythm. A wooden beam creaks overhead. A horse stamps outside. And somewhere downstairs, a cup touches a table. You almost smile. If someone had told you before tonight that sleeping in a medieval inn would involve this much coordination, you might have laughed. Now you understand. Sleep is not an individual activity here. It is a group project. And apparently nobody has agreed on the schedule. You try to make the best of it. You pull the blanket around your shoulders and settle your head onto the pillow. The pillow is surprisingly better than the mattress. It is still rough, but at least it has some softness. You close your eyes. The snoring continues. You decide to ignore it. Your breathing slows. Your muscles relax. The sounds begin to blur. For a moment you feel yourself drifting. Then the snorer suddenly makes a louder sound. You wake completely. You stare at the ceiling. This is ridiculous. You wonder whether you could sleep downstairs instead. Then you remember the common room. The tables. The benches. The smoke. The late travelers. The servants. The fire. No. Upstairs is better. Probably. You turn again. Your elbow touches the stranger beside you. He shifts. You freeze. You do not want to wake him. He settles again. You wait. Nothing happens. You close your eyes. Another snore. You silently accept your fate. There is something strangely revealing about the shared sleeping chamber. During the day, travelers may have very different identities. A merchant might be wealthy. A pilgrim might be respected. A messenger might be important. A farmer might be exhausted from work. But at night, all of that disappears. Everyone becomes a body trying to rest. And everybody has its own habits. Some people sleep quietly. Some toss and turn. Some talk. Some cough. Some wake frequently. Some apparently possess lungs powerful enough to challenge the entire building. The snorer across the room belongs firmly to the last category. You wonder if anyone has ever complained. Perhaps they have. Perhaps he simply sleeps through every complaint. You almost envy him. At least he is sleeping. You are still awake. You shift your blanket again. The room feels warmer now. The fire downstairs must still be burning strongly. The smoke has thinned, but the heat remains. You consider removing the blanket. Then the draft returns. You keep it. You are beginning to understand that medieval comfort often involves choosing which inconvenience you prefer. Warm but smoky. Cool but drafty. Soft but crowded. Quiet but downstairs. There is no perfect option. There is only the least unpleasant one. You choose warm and crowded. At least the blanket helps. The snoring continues. You stare at the ceiling. The wooden beams are barely visible in the darkness. They are thick and irregular. Some have been shaped by hand. Others look rough. The entire building feels handmade. There is something comforting about that too. Nothing here is perfectly smooth. Nothing is perfectly aligned. The bed is uneven. The walls are uneven. The floor is uneven. Even the sounds are uneven. Everything carries evidence of use. You think about the people who built the inn. Carpenters cutting timber. Workers carrying heavy beams. Someone shaping doors. Someone making hinges. Someone weaving blankets. Someone filling mattresses with straw. Someone hauling water. Someone chopping firewood. The inn may feel simple to you, but it represents a huge amount of labor. You turn onto your side again. The stranger beside you is still asleep. His breathing is steady. For a moment you envy him. Then you hear the snore again. You almost laugh. There is no point fighting it. So you stop. You let the sound exist. You let the coughing exist. You let the creaking wood exist. You let the wind exist. You let the distant horses exist. You stop expecting silence. And strangely, that helps. The sounds become background, not interruptions. Just part of the night. Your breathing becomes slower. The mattress still feels uncomfortable. The blanket still smells faintly of smoke. The straw still rustles whenever you move. But your body is exhausted. Your eyelids become heavy. The snoring seems farther away. The room becomes softer. Your thoughts slow down. You begin drifting. Then, footsteps. You open your eyes. Someone is walking upstairs. Again. You stare toward the doorway. A shadow passes across the wall. A late traveler has arrived. You almost laugh. Of course. The night is not finished with you yet. The new arrival pauses at the entrance. He looks around the chamber. You can almost see the same realization on his face that you experienced earlier. There are no empty beds. The innkeeper appears behind him. They whisper. The snorer continues. The newcomer looks toward the available spaces. One of them is near you. Your eyes widen. You hope he does not choose it, not because you dislike him. You simply cannot imagine sharing your already tiny sleeping area with another person. The innkeeper points somewhere else. The newcomer nods. You relax. He moves carefully through the room. Straw crunches beneath his feet. A sleeper turns over. The new guest finally reaches his place. He sets down his bundle. He lies down. Silence returns. You close your eyes again. The snoring continues, but now it sounds almost familiar. You realize something. You may not be comfortable. You may not have privacy. You may not even have control over the noise. But you are no longer surprised by any of it. And perhaps that is how medieval travelers survived these nights, not by making the world quiet, by becoming accustomed to its noise. You breathe slowly. The fire crackles downstairs. The horse shifts outside. The wind brushes the walls. The snorer rumbles. The new traveler breathes softly. The straw beneath you settles. And finally, against all odds, you begin to fall asleep. Not deeply, not peacefully, but enough. For now, for the first time that night, you stop fighting the sounds. The snoring is still there. The coughing is still there. The occasional creak of timber still travels through the darkness. But your mind has begun placing each sound where it belongs. The fire downstairs. The horse outside. The traveler, turning in his sleep. The late arrival breathing softly in the corner. The enormous snorer, performing his nightly duties with astonishing confidence. You almost find it comforting. Almost. Then your stomach growls. You open your eyes. Of course, you have spent the entire day traveling, and dinner at the inn was not exactly a feast. You remember the meal. A bowl of thick pottage, some coarse bread, perhaps a little cheese, a wooden cup of ale or water, enough to keep you moving, not enough to make you forget hunger. You sit up slowly. The room is still dark. For a moment, you consider going downstairs. Then you remember the hour. The inn's common room may be quieter now, but the kitchen is probably still warm. You wonder whether anything remains. Your stomach answers for you. You get up. Carefully. You do not want to wake the others. The wooden floor is cold beneath your feet. You reach for your boots. They are still beside the mattress. You pull them on quietly. The snore continues. You shake your head. Some people could probably sleep through a thunderstorm. You step toward the door. The wooden boards complain beneath your weight. Creak. You freeze. Nobody moves. You continue. Another creak. Still nothing. You ease the door open. The staircase is dark. A small lamp burns at the bottom. You descend slowly. The common room looks completely different at this hour. During the evening, it was crowded and noisy. Now most of the tables are empty. A few cups remain where travelers left them. A wooden spoon rests beside a bowl. The fire has been reduced to glowing coals. The room smells of smoke, cooked grain, roasted meat, damp wool, and old wood. It is strangely peaceful. You walk toward the hearth. An inn servant is still awake. He looks at you. You look at him. Neither of you speaks for a moment. He understands immediately. Hungry. He points toward a covered pot. You lift the lid. There is still food, not much, but enough. You are suddenly grateful for the ordinary miracle of leftovers. You find a wooden bowl. You serve yourself a small portion. The food is warm, not hot. Warm. And after the night you have had, warm feels luxurious. You sit at a nearby table. The bench is hard. You do not care. You take the first spoonful. The pottage is thick and simple. Grains, vegetables, perhaps a little meat. The exact ingredients are less important than the warmth. You eat slowly. The servant returns to his work. He adds another piece of wood to the fire. The flames rise. Golden light moves across the room. You notice how much the inn changes when the crowd disappears. During the day, it is a place of movement. At night, it becomes a shelter. People arrive exhausted. People leave early. Servants clean. Fires burn. Animals are fed. Food is prepared. Beds are filled. And then, eventually, everyone tries to sleep. You look at the empty tables. You wonder how many conversations happened here before you arrived. Merchants discussing prices. Travelers talking about roads. Pilgrims exchanging news. Local people arguing about weather. Someone probably telling a story. Someone laughing. Someone complaining. Someone exaggerating the danger of the road. That is another reason inns matter. They are not simply places to sleep. They are meeting points. A traveler can learn things here. News travels with people. A merchant might hear about a bridge washed away several miles ahead. A pilgrim might learn which road is safer. A messenger might hear that a town is preparing for a festival. A farmer might hear about prices in the next market. In a world without modern communication, an inn can become a small information network. You take another spoonful. The food tastes better now. Maybe because you are hungry, maybe because the room is quiet, or maybe because you have begun to appreciate anything that makes the night slightly easier. You look toward the servant. He is wiping a wooden table. You wonder how many hours he has been awake. He probably started before you arrived. Someone had to prepare the fire. Someone had to clean. Someone had to receive travelers. Someone had to feed the horses. Someone had to prepare the evening meal. And someone will probably have to wake before dawn. You realize that while you complain about sleeping badly, the inn's workers have hardly slept at all. Your complaint suddenly feels less impressive. You finish the bowl. The servant collects it. You thank him. He nods. No ceremony, No grand farewell. Just two tired people acknowledging each other in the middle of the night. You stand. Before going upstairs, you move closer to the hearth. The warmth reaches your hands. You hold them near the fire. For a moment, you simply stand there. The flames are hypnotic. You understand why the hearth sits at the center of so many medieval homes and inns. It provides heat. It provides light. It allows food to be cooked. It gives people a place to gather. It is dangerous if ignored. It consumes fuel constantly, but without it, the building becomes cold and dark. You watch a small flame curl around a piece of wood. The fire makes tiny sounds. Crackle, snap, hiss. The same kind of sound you heard upstairs. Only now it seems pleasant. You realize how much of medieval life depends on fire. Every warm meal, every heated room, every candle, every piece of metal shaped by a smith, every loaf of bread baked, every pot cooked, all require fuel. Wood does not simply appear. Someone has to cut it. Someone has to transport it. Someone has to store it. Someone has to feed it into the fire. The warmth you are enjoying is the result of work done hours or days earlier. You look around the room. Even comfort has a labor history. That thought stays with you as you climb the stairs again. The sleeping chamber is just as you left it. The snorer is still snoring. You almost laugh. You return to your mattress. Your body feels heavier now. Warm food has made you sleepy. You remove your boots. You place them beside the bed. Then you lie down. The straw shifts beneath you. You pull the blanket up. The room is still imperfect. The mattress is still rough. The air still smells faintly of smoke. The snoring continues. But your stomach is warm. Your hands are warm. And your exhaustion is winning. You close your eyes. The inn settles around you. Wood contracts in the cool night. A horse moves outside. Someone downstairs closes a door. The fire gives another quiet crackle. You breathe slowly. You think about the strange comfort of this place. It is not luxurious. It is not private. It is not silent. But it is shelter. Outside, the road is dark. The weather could change. The mud could deepen. A traveler could become lost. A wheel could break. A horse could go lame. There are countless problems waiting beyond the door. Inside, at least for tonight, you are protected from most of them. You understand why people stopped at inns, even when the beds were uncomfortable, because the alternative was often worse. A roadside inn gave you walls, a roof, food, water, fire, company, and a place to lie down. That was enough. You turn onto your side. The snoring becomes softer now. Or perhaps you are simply too tired to care. Your eyes close. The darkness deepens. You are almost asleep when you notice something else. A faint smell. Something warm. Something familiar. Bread. Fresh bread. You open your eyes. Somewhere downstairs, someone is already preparing breakfast. Morning cannot be far away. And suddenly, the nightmare of sleeping in the medieval inn seems slightly less terrible. Because if fresh bread is coming, perhaps you have survived the worst of the night. The smell of fresh bread reaches you before the morning light does. You remain beneath the blanket, eyes closed, letting the warmth of the room and the faint scent of baking dough drift through your thoughts. For a few moments, you are not sure whether you are awake. Then you hear movement downstairs. Wood scraping against wood. A bucket being placed on the floor. Quiet footsteps. Someone speaking softly. The inn is waking. You open your eyes. The chamber is still dim. The travelers around you remain mostly asleep, wrapped in blankets and tucked into their narrow spaces. The enormous snorer has finally become quiet. You almost miss the sound. Almost. You smile to yourself. Then you notice the first pale light entering through the tiny window. Morning. You have survived the night, not elegantly, not comfortably, but successfully. You sit up. The straw mattress gives a dry little rustle beneath you. Your shoulders feel stiff. Your back is not particularly grateful for the experience. You stretch carefully, The traveler beside you groans softly and turns over. Across the chamber, another guest sits up and rubs his eyes. Someone searches for a boot. Someone else reaches for a cloak. Nobody speaks much. Everyone seems to understand the morning ritual. Find your belongings. Find your shoes. Find your dignity if possible. Then find breakfast. You pull on your boots. They are still cold. You fasten your clothing and gather your small travel bundle. The room looks different in daylight. This is one of the strangest things about medieval inns. At night, everything seems larger and more mysterious. The shadows hide the rough edges. The darkness makes the room feel endless. Morning reveals the truth. The walls are closer. The ceiling is lower. The beds are smaller. The timber is rougher. The floor is more uneven. And the straw that seemed harmless in darkness is now scattered everywhere. You look around. Someone has left a blanket folded near the wall. A wooden cup sits beside a bed. A pair of boots waits beneath another mattress. A small travel sack hangs from a peg. The room is filled with ordinary objects. Nothing is luxurious. Everything is useful. You stand and brush a few pieces of straw from your clothing. Then you notice the traveler who arrived during the night. He is already awake. He looks just as tired as you feel. You exchange a brief smile. Neither of you needs to explain. You both survive the same room. That is enough. You head downstairs. The staircase is busier now. A servant carries a wooden bucket upward. Another person comes down carrying folded cloth. Someone passes you with a basket. The inn is changing from sleeping place to working place. Downstairs, the hearth burns brightly. Morning light enters through the small windows. The common room is no longer empty. Several travelers are already seated. A merchant speaks quietly with another man. A pilgrim warms his hands near the fire. Someone is tying a bundle to a wooden pack frame. The innkeeper moves from table to table. You find a seat. The bench is still hard. At least now you are awake enough to complain about it properly. A bowl appears in front of you. Then comes bread, fresh bread. You look at it. For a moment it seems like the finest thing you have ever seen. The loaf is simple. Its crust is firm. Its shape is uneven. It is not decorated. It does not need to be. You tear off a piece. Steam escapes from the center. You take a bite. Warm, chewy, earthy, comforting. You understand immediately why bread mattered so much. It is not merely food. It is reliable food, portable food, storable food, food that can be carried on a journey, food that can be shared, food that can be eaten with almost anything. For a traveler, bread is practical security. You take another bite. The pottage from last night feels distant now. Your hunger is returning. Perhaps breakfast will become another meal to remember. Around you, the inn becomes louder. A horse outside gives a short whinny. Someone opens the main door. Cold morning air enters. A traveler complains about the weather. Another asks about the road ahead. The innkeeper answers. You listen. The road is apparently muddy. A bridge farther ahead may be difficult to cross. One traveler says the rain was heavy yesterday. Another says the road should improve by midday. You realize that this is how information travels, not through a glowing screen, not through a printed newspaper delivered to your door, not through a message arriving instantly. It travels through people. A traveler hears something. He tells another traveler. That traveler carries the information onward. And sometimes the information is accurate. Sometimes it is old. Sometimes it is exaggerated. Sometimes it is completely wrong. You imagine how quickly a rumor could move from one inn to another. Someone arrives from a distant town. He tells a story. A merchant repeats it. A pilgrim carries it onward. A week later, the story may have changed completely. You smile at the thought. The medieval world may be slow compared with yours, but people are still people. They talk. They speculate. They exaggerate. They remember selectively. They tell stories. And they listen. You finish your bread. The innkeeper approaches. You ask about the road. He gives you directions. Then he warns you about a section that becomes particularly muddy after rain. You thank him. He nods and moves away. That small warning might save you hours, perhaps more. You begin to understand the value of the inn again. The building itself may be uncomfortable, but the knowledge inside it can be priceless. The walls shelter you from the weather. The kitchen feeds you. The stable protects your horse. The innkeeper knows the neighborhood. Other travelers know distant roads. Together, all these things make the inn part of a much larger system. A traveler does not simply rent a bed. He temporarily joins a network. You look around the room. The merchant near the fire is checking a leather pouch. The pilgrim is tightening his sandals. A messenger is securing a satchel. A farmer is eating quietly. Everyone has somewhere to go. Everyone carries something. Everyone has a reason for being here. And everyone will eventually leave. You finish your breakfast. You feel almost ready. Almost. Then you remember the bed. You glance upstairs. You think about the straw, the snoring, the coughing, the cold draft, the warmth, the strange smells, the crowded room, the lack of privacy. You realize something unexpected. Despite everything, you are going to remember this place, not because it was comfortable, because it was ordinary. This is what makes the experience useful for understanding the past. History is often presented through kings, castles, battles, crowns, treaties, great monuments. But most people did not spend their lives inside palaces. They walked roads. They carried bundles. They ate bread. They slept wherever they could. They waited for weather to improve. They shared rooms. They listened to rumors. They complained about food. They worried about money. They woke before sunrise. They continued. That is the world you have stepped into. And the medieval inn gives you a small doorway into it. You stand from the bench. The innkeeper tells you that the road should be better once the sun rises higher. You gather your belongings. Before leaving, you look once more toward the hearth. The fire has burned brightly all night. Someone will keep it alive today. Someone will cook. Someone will clean. Someone will replace the straw. Someone will carry water. Someone will feed the horses. And tonight, when another traveler arrives, exhausted from the road, the same cycle will begin again. The inn never truly sleeps. Only the guests do. You step toward the doorway. Morning light fills the entrance. Outside, the road waits. You take a breath. The air is cool. The sky is pale. The countryside stretches beyond the inn. For a moment, you consider turning around and asking for another night. Then you remember the mattress. You step outside. The door closes behind you, and for the first time since arriving, you are grateful to be awake. The road feels strangely peaceful after the noise of the inn. You walk slowly at first. Your body is still remembering the mattress. Every step reminds you that you have spent the night sleeping on straw. But the morning air helps. It is cool and clean. The countryside stretches ahead. Behind you, the inn becomes smaller. You do not turn around immediately. You keep walking. The road is muddy in places. Your boots sink slightly into the soft earth. You pull them free, then another step, then another. You begin to understand why travelers paid attention to weather. A dry road is convenient. A wet road can change everything. Rain turns dust into mud. Mud slows horses. Mud traps carts. Mud covers shoes. Mud splashes clothing. And if the rain continues long enough, a simple journey can become an exhausting struggle. You look down at your boots. They are already dirty. You smile. At least they are doing their job. Ahead, a cart moves slowly. Its wooden wheels leave deep tracks in the mud. Two horses pull it forward. The driver sits near the front, wrapped in a cloak. You eventually catch up. He glances at you. You exchange a brief greeting. Neither of you needs to say much. The road is speaking for itself. The cart is moving slowly. That tells you enough. You continue walking. The morning grows brighter. Birds call from the trees. A distant church bell sounds. The world feels enormous, and yet the road itself is surprisingly limited. There may be only a few major routes through the region. Most travelers have to use the same roads. That means the same inns become important again and again. The same bridges, the same market towns, the same river crossings, the same muddy stretches, the same hills. A journey is not simply about distance. It is about obstacles. You remember the innkeeper's warning. The bridge ahead may be difficult. You wonder what it will look like. You walk for another hour. The road gradually slopes downward. Trees appear along both sides. Then you hear water. A river. You continue until the trees open. There it is. The bridge. It is not enormous. It is made from timber. Several thick wooden beams support the crossing. The surface is uneven. The river beneath it moves quickly after the recent rain. You stop. Other travelers are already crossing. A merchant leads a horse carefully across. A woman carrying a basket follows. A farmer pushes a small cart. Everyone moves slowly. Nobody wants to fall. You wait. The merchant reaches the other side. The woman follows. Then it is your turn. You step onto the bridge. The wood creaks. You look down. Water moves beneath you. You immediately decide that looking down is unnecessary. You look forward instead. Step, creak, step, creak. The bridge holds. You reach the other side. You breathe out. Nothing dramatic happened. But you understand why the innkeeper mentioned it. A journey can contain dozens of small moments like this. Nothing is necessarily dangerous by itself, but each one requires attention. A broken wheel, a muddy road, a swollen river, a tired horse, a missed turn, a sudden storm, a locked gate, a steep hill, a crowded market, a poorly marked path. Travelers have to solve problems continuously. You continue along the road. Your mind returns to the inn, the bed, the snoring, the bread, the fire, the conversations. You realize that the uncomfortable night was actually one of the easier parts. The inn allowed you to stop. Outside, you have to keep moving. You pass a small farm. A farmer is already working. He carries a wooden tool toward a field. A woman stands near the doorway of a small house. Smoke rises from the roof. A child runs across the yard. A dog follows. The morning has begun for everyone. You keep walking. The countryside is beautiful, but beauty does not mean comfort. That is something you are learning. A green field still requires labor. A warm house still requires firewood. A loaf of bread still requires grain. A road still requires maintenance. A bridge still requires repair. Everything has a hidden cost. You pass another traveler. He carries a walking staff. His clothing is simple. His face is tired. You exchange greetings. He asks where you stayed. You mention the inn. He nods. He knows it. Of course he does. Perhaps he slept there last month. Perhaps he has stayed there many times. You begin to wonder how travelers recognized reliable inns. The answer is probably simple. People talked. An inn with decent food became known. An inn with rude staff became known. An inn with a dangerous reputation became known. An inn with clean bedding became known. An inn with terrible bedding also became known. You almost laugh. Perhaps the snoring room was famous too. You continue. By midday, the road becomes busier. More carts appear. A group of merchants travels together. A rider passes quickly. A farmer leads animals toward a market. The road is becoming a moving stream of people. You notice how varied they are. Different clothing, different accents, different goods, different destinations. But they share the same road. This is one of the strange things about medieval travel. The road connects people who might otherwise never meet. A merchant from one region can speak with a farmer from another. A pilgrim can hear news from a distant town. A messenger can carry information hundreds of miles. A traveler can bring unfamiliar customs and stories. And an inn becomes one of the places where these worlds overlap. You think about the common room again. It was crowded, sometimes irritating, sometimes noisy. But it was also connected. You realized that your poor night's sleep was part of something larger. The inn was not designed around your comfort. It was designed around movement. People arrived. People rested. People ate. People talked. People left. Then someone else took their place. The building was part bedroom, part restaurant, part stable, part information center, and part waiting room. That is why privacy was limited. Space was valuable. Every room had to serve multiple purposes. Every bed could be used by another traveler the next night. Every table could become a meeting place. Every fire could warm dozens of people. Nothing was wasted if it could be reused. You walk onward. The sun rises higher. Your shadow shortens. Your stomach is full. Your body is warmer. Your mind is clearer, and for the first time, you realize something important. You are no longer thinking about luxury. You are thinking about function. Does the shelter keep out rain? Does the food provide energy? Does the bed give you enough rest to continue? Does the innkeeper know the road? Does the stable protect the horse? If the answer is yes, then perhaps the place is doing its job. Comfort is a bonus. Survival is the priority. That difference changes the way you see the medieval inn. Last night, you thought the room was terrible. This morning, you understand it differently. The straw mattress was not supposed to feel like a modern bed. The crowded room was not supposed to provide privacy. The fire was not supposed to create perfect temperature control. The inn was not a luxury hotel. It was infrastructure, a practical building supporting people on the move. You continue walking. The road stretches ahead. And somewhere behind you, another traveler is probably approaching the same inn. He will arrive tired. He will eat. He will talk. He will find a bed. He will hear the same creaking beams. Perhaps he will meet the same snorer. Perhaps he will complain about the same straw. And perhaps, just like you, he will wake the next morning and realize that the uncomfortable little building kept him safe through the night. You smile. The thought is strangely comforting. The road continues. So do you.